Hello again, guys. How have you guys been? We are together with, I believe, final video that originated from me playing the Lich, right? When playing the Lich, we were using Arcane Surge, and I wanted to, tell you about it because there are some passives in the tree that increase the effect of Arcane Surge, but you can get a little lost on how to getting Arcane Surge, right? So I wanted to, explain to you guys about it. So there are two ways of getting Arcane Surge, right? One of them is playing a Stormweaver, the most popular character of Season 0. As you can see, as part of your Ascendancy, when you play as a Stormweaver, which is a sorceress Ascendancy, you have permanent Arcane Surge, right? As you can see, and Arcane Surge is a buff that grants you 10% more cast speed and 20% more mana regenerate, but you can increase its effects, right? So for example, Stormweaver increases the potency of Arcane Surge herself, but there are also nodes in your tree that are concerned with increasing the effect of Arcane Surge, right? So you can get a lot of cast speed and mana regeneration. It's very good. So this is, one way of doing it. Yeah, this is my standard character. And the other way that anyone that is not a Stormweaver can get to it is via a support gem, right? So it is this support gem, right? That is the only way of getting it. So it's a little bit weird. I feel like having a whole series of passives that are dedicated to one support gem and one character's ascendancy only, but it is what it is. So guys, Arcane Surge is meant for obviously casters, right? Because thing is, characters that are not casters never go for high mana regenerates, and they don't go for high mana and high mana regen. I know there are exceptions out there, but that's the general rule, right? You go for, like 800 mana at maximum, right? Can go as low as 500. So the mana regen is not very good because, your mana is regenerating based on what your maximum mana is, right? It's a formula that's based off Diablo 2, right? That's what most of PoE1 was based on. Of course, it has original stuff, but the core rules are based on that. So, in Diablo 2, guys, you would regenerate your full mana in 2 minutes, right? However much mana you have. I'm not taking the bonus into account. So, for example, guys, you have 120 mana, you regenerate just 1 mana per second. Why? Because, in order to regenerate it in 2 minutes, aka 120 seconds, you would have to regenerate 1 mana per second, right? And you have, let's say, 1,000 mana, you would be regenerating about 8 per, right? That's how it was in Diablo. In Path of Exile, it's similar. It's not the same thing, but the more mana you have, the more you regenerate, right? So this is mainly meant for casters, and of course, it's also mainly meant for casters because it grants you cast speed. So, for example, guys, a lightning spear character, what would they get out of that, right? I mean, you don't cast skills, right? Or you cast very few skills, and you do not regenerate a lot of mana, so it's not very useful. Generally, those characters go for mana per kill jewels or whatnot. So, anyway, right, as is my trademark. So this is meant for casters mostly, because the mana regen and the cast speed both help you. And so, guys, how does it work? If you take a look at this gem here, it says you gain Arcane Surge for 10 seconds after spending a total of 100 of your maximum mana on supported skills. So sadly, guys, this will bring about the notorious nerd alert into place, because you have to calculate. You don't want it to be a random skill, right? So you want to min-max this properly. So how does it work? So I would say, go for a certain fraction of your mana as the cost of your skill, so you can trigger Arcane Surge on a certain number of casts. So for example, guys, if your skill costs 1/3 of your mana, you will have to do 3 casts in order to receive Arcane Surge. If it costs 1/2 of your mana, right, you will have to do 2 casts to do the thing, right? And in theory, if it costs 100% of your mana, you would have to do 1 cast, but that's not possible, right? That's not very logical. Or a quarter. And I would say, if you cannot reach a quarter, I would say it's worthless, right? Because it only lasts 12 seconds and you wanted to trigger it. I would say 3 casts is the ideal place. 2 casts is achievable, but it would also hurt your mana. And 4 casts, I would say, is the downright minimum acceptable. So with this character, I have 3 casts. Let me show you. 1, 2, and 3, and I have Arcane Surge. As you can see, it lasts 12 seconds, right? And I have increased effect, so it gives you more cast speed and more mana regeneration. Take a look at this cast speed, 0.68, and it goes to 0.8, right? So, for example, I could have had this with 2 casts, right? I could have used a higher level Contagion gem because I'm only using level 16. I could have used a higher Contagion gem to trigger it with 2 casts. But thing is, guys, you do cast Contagion pretty often, and sometimes the combo doesn't go off, or so it can give you grief. So that's why I went for the 3 spot. And as I said, 4 casts to trigger the Arcane Surge is the absolute worst case scenario that you should be acceptable. And I would say it's not very good, right? I would definitely suggest 3, but if you have to do it with 4, 2 could be a little bit problematic. I would say 3 is the sweet spot. Depends on your situation. 2 or 3, right? And in the worst case, go 4, right? So guys, how do you calculate the mana cost, right? That's also pretty important because you will have additional skills added to it. So yeah, as I said, a bit of a nerd alert. Let me just show you this. So there is a very nice resource site for Path of Exile called PoE2 db slash PoE2 db .tw, right? And in that site, you can just monitor about everything. So for example, for me, I want to observe Contagion, right? I just type out Contagion and it just gives me all of the requirements for the skills and whatnot. Yeah. So for example, guys, at 27 it costs 227 mana. So as I said, a bit of a nerd alert, but take a look at this. It costs 442. So how is that, right? We did a support gem video recently, you might remember. So what you have to do is you have to take a look at your cost multipliers and you have to do the multiplicative. So I have a 150% and I have a 130%, right? And which means I have to increase this cost by 50% first, and then by another 30%. And they are multiplicative, not additive. So what I have to do is 227 times 1.5 times 1.3, right? Or just straight up 227 times 1.95, right? That's what it adds up to. So what you have to do is, guys, you have to take a look at your skill levels that you are going to use Arcane Surge in. You have to take your increased skill levels into account, right? And then look up the cost of the skill in question, right? And then further improve that cost by your socketed gems and the multipliers, right? And finally, you will arrive at a number that will be your final mana cost, right? That is hoping that you do not have energy shields converted into mana cost convert into life or something. If you don't have that, you will arrive at a final cost, and you have to make sure that number is above 1/3 or 1/4 or 1/2 of your total mana. So guys, let me do this, right? I have a level 27 Contagion, right? The mana cost is 227, and why am I telling you this? You could just do trial and error, but trial and error will require you to buy many gems, and not only it would be wasting currency, you would also be subjected to trade, right, which would be very toxic. Trying to buy level 16 gems, 50 million people will be AFK, right? They will not reply. I am trying to save you from that torment. So guys, so the level 27 is 227 mana, right? We don't need to, well, the thing is, we kind of need to look stuff up because how do I know level 16, right? If I use level 17, I will be paying more mana because, guys, Contagion is a skill which the damage is irrelevant, right? I can just use a level 3 Contagion here, right? The only reason I'm using a high level Contagion is to be able to trigger the Arcane Surge more frequently, right? So what I have to do is I take a look at my global skill levels, that's plus 11, right? And then I take a look at the cost that I want. So also my skill multipliers are 150% and 130%. That adds up to a total multiplier of 1.95. So guys, I have to find the number that is multiplied by 1.95 and adds up to more than 1/3 of my mana, right? And yeah, so what I do is, guys, I divide my mana by 3, right? So let's, for the sake of argument, assume a simple scenario. Let's say my mana is 1,200, right? I divide it by 3, so I want my cost to reach 400, right? And then I divide it by 1.95. Let's just say 2 for the sake of argument again, 200. So guys, I need to reach the mana cost of 200 when I added 11 skill levels, right? So I take a look here. Level 25 cost 177 mana. Level 26 cost 200 mana. And level 27 costs 227 mana. Because of some minor roundings, I think level 26 will not do it for me. Actually, let me just go over it. Yeah, because we did a little bit of rounding, guys. For the sake of argument, it will not coincide with the scenario because we rounded my mana to 1,200 and we rounded the cost multiplier to 2, whereas it was 1.95. So the cost I need is 203, right, in order to reach 1/3 of my mana. And level 26 doesn't cut it. I have to bring level 27 into it. So if I want to arrive at level 27 with 11 level added, that means I have to use a level 16 Contagion, right? That's how it works. Yeah, bit of nerd alert, but this has to be min-maxed, right? If you are using Arcane Surge, don't do it randomly. So guys, you could use your Arcane Surge on your main skill level, then you don't have to do any calculation, right? Because your main skill has to be as high as possible, right? And you would probably be able to do it, with 2 or 3 casts, right? Depending on how much mana your main skill costs. So for example, guys, if I do this, right, just for the sake of argument, okay, so take a look at this, which means it will be taking 3 hits for me, 1, 2, and 3, as you can see, right? So with the main skill, you don't have to do the calculation, but if it's a supportive skill like Contagion that you don't really care about the level of, right, then you can min-max it, right? You just want it to surpass 1/3. So guys, if it's not a skill that you cast very frequently, maybe you could go a half, but the problem is if it's not a skill that you cast very frequently, how will you get the Arcane Surge to work all the time? So guys, when I'm mapping, my Arcane Surge is almost always up, right? Because, so guys, how does this work, right? If I have arranged my Arcane Surge to go off once every 3 casts, and it has a duration of 12 seconds as you saw, if I cast 3 Contagions in the time frame of 12 seconds, that means I will have a permanent Arcane Surge up, right? I mean, sometimes there is a lot of running involved, you know, but generally when actual fighting, it's always up, right? So 3 is a nice spot. I have tried level 19, I think that was the requirement. So for my character, I had to use a level 19 contagion because the mana cost goes up insanely at the end. I was able to reach about 600 mana cost there, right? And I didn't like it, right? Because mana was depleting too often. Because guys, sometimes you do the contagion, you do the essence drain, it doesn't hit, then you have to do it again, and it depletes your mana way too quickly, right? I have arrived at the conclusion of doing 3 casts to trigger the Arcane Surge is good enough. But as I said, if you are using if you are using the Arcane Surge on your main skill, which I wouldn't suggest, right? Because you would be losing a precious support gem, at least for this build. Then you don't care. You can't do a calculation, right? Because you have to put in your supports, you have to go for the max level that you can, and the cost will be the cost, whatever it is, right? And obviously, if you are playing a caster, the skill level will be very high, and you will be getting a trigger once every 3 casts or 2 casts. And of course, keep in mind, you can also arrange the cost to be higher or lower by changing support gems, right? So for example, this Intense Agony doesn't give a cost multiplier, right? I could take it out and I could do an increased multiplier there by, let's say, 30%. That would give me a mana cost of 600, and I know I would be able to trigger the cast once every 2. But as I said, I have found out that 3 casts is the sweet spot. Being able to trigger the Arcane Surge with 3 casts is the sweet spot. And yeah, I wouldn't suggest anything else if you are going with a supportive skill. If it's a main skill, be it 2 casts or 3 casts, get whatever you can. So hopefully this was, enlightening. I couldn't find the right word. I hope this was helpful. Yeah, that's better. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.